My name is Ann Smith. I'm an artist based in DC and Mount Rainier, Maryland. And I'm going to be showing you a little bit of the studio today, as well as some of my silkscreen printmaking process. The basic process of silkscreen printmaking is that you're pushing ink through a very fine mesh screen onto paper. And what that does is deposit this very even, thin, flat layer of ink onto your paper. There's nothing like brush marks or anything like that because you're just using this squeegee. And the screen is there to regulate the flow of the ink onto the paper. A lot of times silkscreen printmaking is characterized by large areas of flat color, but there really is so much more you can do there. You can also do a lot of gradients of color, which is what I've been working with lately. You can experiment with different ways of either mixing or not mixing multiple colors on the screen. That's something that I've also been experimenting with. You can also have extremely painterly silkscreen prints. That's something that my mentor, Lou Stovall, has developed and experimented with over the course of his decades-long career. That's something that's very inspirational to me. When Lou was teaching me silkscreen printmaking in the studio, one thing he would always tell me was to choose a color that would move the print forward. That's something that I always think about as I'm mixing color. Like, am I choosing a color that's gonna make a difference and be meaningful in this image? And if not, then it shouldn't be there. The colors that I mix are usually at least 50% transparent base, oftentimes more, because I'm wanting this sense of light infused into the print. And if I were to use white to make a light color, it would end up looking kind of heavy and opaque and chalky. And maybe there will be a print that I want to make like that in the future, but these days I find that I just want this sense of light infused into the print. The work that I'm showing with Grace has not only these split fountain transitions of color, but also these pools of color that kind of swirl through the sky and the ground. And the process for that is really up to a lot of chance. That involves not mixing my colors before I print them onto the paper. And all of the mixing happens as the squeegee draws the ink over the stencil. So that injects a lot of unpredictability into the image in a way that I find really interesting. And it's something that I'm continuing to explore with a series of darker prints that are more inspired by nighttime and that transition from day into night. In silkscreen printmaking, and this is true of any kind of printmaking, the bulk of the work happens in the lead up to the actual printing part. So all of the preparation, cutting your paper, dusting your paper, mixing your ink, registering the paper to the screen so that all of your images align properly on the paper, that is where the bulk of the work happens. The actual printing part is very quick, or relatively quick, and then after the printing is all of the cleanup, which takes time too. You've got to be really careful with your screen so that it doesn't get clogged, which can, upset your future prints. So you've got to clean things really well and just keep everything really orderly and neat. I take my screens to Pyramid Atlantic in Hyattsville, Maryland, and they have all the equipment that I need to burn a stencil onto my screen. So I burn a very simple shape. It's a rectangle, and then I take that back to my studio, and within that simple rectangle, I can make all of these different variations. I also use a vinyl hand-cut stencil that is essentially like a sticker that I can use to create these cutouts in the image, or essentially these windows within a window. I start by putting a little blob of each color that I'm printing with in an area of the screen that's been masked off. And I use my squeegee to work these pools of ink back and forth until I can see that they've blended smoothly. The more that I go back and forth with the squeegee over these colors, the more smoothly they're going to be blended. Mixing the right colors and the right density of color is so critical to the prints. If I print it and it doesn't have that kind of feeling of distance and depth that I want, the print is not going to be successful. So it's really critical that I get exactly the color that I want before I start printing the whole edition. I'm really curious about this relationship between landscape or place and our imaginations. That reciprocal relationship, I think, is so fascinating and is somehow linked into the stories that we tell about ourselves. I think that the horizon for me is sort of that far off place, that point of longing that to me represents, well, it can represent so many things, but represents that something that I can look forward to.